Stocks, docks and barrels. This morning's Big Business Recap.
Big Business Recap. Big thing to talk about is oil prices at the moment, and Brent crude prices are set to average around $50.67 a barrel in 2021. Marginally down from the level at which they traded early on the last trading day of 2020, according to data from Reuters. Goldman Sachs is one of the analysis companies. They sound a bit more optimistic. They say that Brent is expected to average around $65 a barrel next year. The investment bank cited mass vaccinations and the limited increase in production from OPEC Plus factors as the driving favorable trend. What the commodities chief has told local media is that oil inventories are also declining due to the strengthening demand from Asia, which has added to the general optimism about oil prices next year. Yeah. But lots more people have been sharing their opinions.
That's right. Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, Mohammed Barkindo, he said yesterday that while crude demand is expected to rise by 5.9 million barrels per day to about 95.9 million barrels per day this year, the group sees plenty of downside demand risks in the first half of the year of 2021. He said, "We are only beginning to emerge from a year of deep investment cuts, huge job losses, and the worst crude oil demand destruction on record." Now, we know that prices ended 2020 about 20% below 2019's average, still recovering from the impact of the global economic lockdown measures imposed to battle COVID-19 that slashed fuel demand, even though the world's major producers agreed record output cuts through the year. But OPEC and allied producers, including Russia, a grouping known as OPEC Plus, decided at a meeting last month to raise output by 500,000 barrels per day in January. That's anticipating a boost in demand, and also agreed to meet every month to review the production.
Certainly, Rania, and analysts say that OPEC Plus is likely to maintain January production levels in February. The oil market will get its first glimpse into what OPEC Plus is thinking as early as this week, as the ministers have been meeting to discuss the state of production from February. And according to analysts, if OPEC Plus loosens their production cuts too quickly, there's a threat of a price setback. But if they exercise caution, a rift could arise, and U.S. shale oil production could rise again, and so will oil prices. Analysts say that despite renewed fears about oil demand due to the new strain of COVID-19, Russia is reportedly still in favor of cutting the alliance's oil production, raising it by another 500,000 barrels per day. And analysts said, in addition, a probable end to the trade war between the United States and China and a de-escalation of regional tensions here under the Biden administration could provide an additional impetus to the global economy, which would carry over to oil prices.
A very interesting observation as well. Now, the increase in production also emerged from the second largest producer, Iraq, as well, because obviously they want to balance their payments, they want to balance their accounts, the budget deficit has to be covered. Salaries are a huge chunk of their expenditure for the Iraqi government, and that has really upset some OPEC members, and that's why these meetings are very important when they look at reducing the production so that the prices of oil can stabilize. But a new Biden administration is expected to offer a little bit of a glimpse of optimism, and in line with that, analysts are also saying that Brent oil prices could be expected to hit $60 in the first quarter of 2021, $70 to $80 in the third quarter, and then guess what? $100 by 2024. We've seen prices reaching that levels a few years ago, and that is one of the expectations so far. But we're looking at the prices of oil trading at $52.35 as of this morning for Brent crude, and WTI crude is trading at $49 at the moment. A bit of a sharp contrast to the current figure of the world of Bitcoin, trading at $33,000, 125.19. So very, very interesting to see where this world of commodities and world of investments is going. But we'll continue the focus and continue the discussions surrounding that. We've got the big meeting of the GCC coming up tomorrow. And, of course, the OPEC Plus meetings expected later on in this year. What we'll do now is we'll take a bit of a break and we'll delve a little bit more micro oil discussion with the plans and developments in Iraq, what's going on there. And then followed by that, it'll be the discussions on the gas reserves and exploration here in the Emirate of Sharjah. Stay with us. This is the Morning Majlis, only on Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
Well, going over to Iraq, the country has signed a $2 billion agreement with a Chinese company. This is a bailout for Iraq's cash-strapped government, and it is set to receive money up front in exchange for long-term oil supplies. This deal is the latest example of China lending to struggling oil producers such as Angola, Venezuela, and Ecuador, with repayment in the form of oil barrels rather than cash. Now, the crash in oil demand and prices has hammered Iraq's budget, and the government has been struggling to pay salaries. Commenting on this, the general manager of the State Organization for Marketing of Oil, Ala El-Yasiri, said a mechanism that does not adversely affect Iraq has been set up, providing greater flexibility over the marketing of its crude. He said several offers have been made by the companies. Said there were two European companies that were interested as well, and said that the three companies were intensely competing. He did not disclose the name of the company, but said Iraq will receive $2 billion at zero interest through the sale. But media reports last month named the Chinese company as Zhenhua Oil, a subsidiary of China's largest state-owned defense contractor.
Yeah, it's the first time Baghdad has sought a prepayment deal in which oil is effectively used as security for a loan. It's also the latest example of China lending to struggling oil producers via state-controlled trading companies and banks. So SOMO offered to supply roughly 130,000 barrels a day of crude for 5 years, and that is according to a letter it sent traders in November. Now, it wanted upfront payment for 1 year of supply, which at current prices would bring in more than $2 billion, according to calculations. So the winner gets flexibility in choosing when to ship the crude for a year, according to Al-Yasiri. And this mechanism was actually approved by the cabinet also. So while all major oil exporters have taken a hit from the plunge in prices since March, Iraq is in one of the weakest positions. OPEC's biggest producer after Saudi Arabia, its economy was forecast by the International Monetary Fund to contract 11% just last year. But the government weakened the dinar by almost 20% against the dollar just this December last month, and this is the first devaluation ever since the U.S.-led invasion back in 2003, as its foreign exchange reserves shrank. So, yeah, Iraq's woes makes it harder for the government to raise money more conventionally through the bond market. So the country's dollar yields average 8.2%, which is one of the highest levels for any sovereign.
It's a worrying state, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And in line with that, that's one of the reasons why they're continuing to target the Asian markets, is that they consider sales to the region generally deemed to be the most profitable. OPEC's second largest producer sells nearly 70% of its crude to Asia, including China, India, and South Korea. The country's agreement with OPEC Plus, which is cutting back crude production of around 7.2 million barrels per day, has had a positive impact on Iraq, as the country has been able to earn higher revenues from the sale of low volumes of crude at higher prices. And one of the reasons why they are looking at this is because they they do depend on oil revenue to meet 90% of the government expenditure, including $5 billion spent on monthly salaries for public servants. At the moment, Iraq's sovereign debt is rated to B- by Fitch Ratings, 6 notches below the investment grade. So it'll be very interesting to see how this prepayment plan is going to impact Iraq's growth projections and plans for the year, for the months ahead. So that is one thing that we will be looking at. So, so in a nutshell, this $2 billion prepayment plan will guarantee pay for China's 4 years' worth of crude prior to loading shipments from Iraq, and that is going to be a key focus for the time being in the country. Now, shifting our focus. After a bit of a break, we will shift our focus to the United Arab Emirates, because here in the Emirate of Sharjah, we've had a new production from the Mahani gas field. All of this will be discussed right here on the Morning Majlis, so stay tuned to Pulse 95. We'll be right back after some musical entertainment. Welcome back onto the Morning Majlis. We are talking all things Sharjah at the moment, because when we're talking about oil, we're talking about the energy markets here across the globe, and we've been going micro, and now we're focusing a little bit more on what's happening here in the Emirate of Sharjah. Sharjah National Oil Corporation, SNOC, and its partner ENI have announced the startup of Mahani 1 gas well, marking the commencement of gas production from the Mahani field in Sharjah Area B. The announcement comes within 1 year of the discovery of gas in the field, labelled as the first new onshore discovery in Sharjah for 37 years. Now, despite COVID-19 related challenges, which included the difficulty of importing raw materials during the lockdown and laying of 23,000 meter pipeline in hostile desert conditions during the summer, the well was completed in record 8 months. It is now connected to the existing pipeline, ready to safely produce gas and liquids for processing at the Sajah gas processing plant, owned and operated by SNOC.
Yeah, according to His Excellency Sheikh Sultan bin Ahmed Al Qasimi, president of SNOC, he said the commencement of the first gas production from Mahani less than a year after discovery is actually a tremendous achievement for Sharjah, which meets our commitment to contribute to the efforts of making reliable gas supplies widely available for the local energy needs of Sharjah and also the UAE as a whole. So Mahani 1 was actually drilled to a total measured depth of 14,597 feet, and also tested gas at flow rates of up to 50 mmscf per day, with an associated condensate from the Thamama formation. So the well established Sharjah infrastructure, the abundant capacity of the Sajah gas processing complex, and also the available efficient pipeline network. The well-planned project activities and its project management capabilities have all enabled SNOC to make such an achievement in record time.
Yes, indeed, Rania. And according to Hatem Al Musa, CEO of SNOC, talking about the importance of this, saying bringing on production of the first onshore discovery in Sharjah in almost 4 decades marks the beginning of an exciting time for SNOC and for Sharjah's energy sector. This new production follows just 2 years after the completion of the first Sharjah license round, and we look forward to license additional areas of Sharjah in line with the Emirates' strategic plans in the coming years. And a strategic gas discovery indeed, and so much to look forward to here. The related field development plan provided for the required surface facilities as well as extended well testing are all part of a long-term program to further evaluate the size and potential of Al Mahani field as well. So a lot of future developments here to look forward to.
Yep, but just a bit of a recap. The SNOC and ENI each hold a 50% stake in the Mahani field as part of the Area B concession agreement signed in 2019 following the first successful Sharjah license round. The two companies are also partners in the onshore concession areas A and C, where exploration is actively in progress, with ENI being the operator. And looking at, in addition to the new Mahani field, SNOC also owns and operates over 50 wells, a gas processing complex, and 2 hydrocarbon liquid storage and export terminals. Its Sajjar complex is the hub of gas pipelines connecting the Northern Emirates. So the big news so far is the production has started from the Mahani 1 gas well, making the commencement of gas production from the Mahani field in Sharjah Area B a very proud moment for the Emirate of Sharjah, and also going to really support the energy demands of the country as a whole as well. And we'll keep you posted about other developments in the Emirate of Sharjah for sure. For the time being, what we'll do is we'll give you a bit of a breather. We'll let you enjoy some musical entertainment for your early morning drive, and we shall return right after that. So just after the news headlines at 9 a.m, we'll continue the discussions here on the Morning Majlis. It's all about developments across the globe and what's happening, especially when it comes to the world of literature as well. Stay with us. This is the Morning Majlis, only on Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
Yes, welcome back on to the Morning Majlis, and it's vaccine talks, all about vaccines. That's what's really occupying our world right now. We have several vaccines that have been rolled out across the globe. And here in the UAE, we have the Sinopharm vaccine. And also we have the Pfizer vaccine, but mainly it's the Sinopharm all across the Emirates. So the Sinopharm vaccine has been approved for emergency use in several countries, actually, and the company has been conducting late-stage clinical trials also in 10 nations, including Argentina, Morocco as well. But in September, the UAE was the first country outside China to approve emergency use of a Sinopharm vaccine for frontline workers. Now it's being administered for everyone, and the vaccine has been tested on around 31,000 people in the UAE. It has shown 86% efficacy in preventing COVID-19 infection, according to MOHAP. No serious safety concerns were found during trials. Now, phase 3 trials in the UAE found that as it was or did have an efficacy rate of 86% in preventing infection, it also was 100% effective in preventing moderate to severe cases of the novel coronavirus. But it is, though, its efficacy level is lower than that of several in development by other companies, or not in development, that's already been developed by Pfizer and BioNTech, Moderna, also Sputnik 5. But the way it works is definitely different.
Certainly, Rania, and a rather interesting one at that. Now, what we know is China has approved the Sinopharm vaccine. The vaccine is also in use in Bahrain and, of course, as you stated, the United Arab Emirates. Essentially, it's a vaccine made from the coronavirus, and it works by teaching your immune system to make antibodies against the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. These antibodies attach to viral proteins, such as the so-called spike proteins that stud its surface. And one of the researchers, once they produced large stocks of the coronaviruses, they doused them with a chemical called beta-propylactone. And this compound disabled the coronaviruses by bonding to their genes. So these inactivated coronaviruses could no longer replicate, but their proteins, including the spike, remained intact. The researchers then drew off the inactivated viruses and mixed them with a tiny amount of a compound and used an adjuvant, which stimulates the immune system to boost its response to a vaccine. This type of vaccine has been used for over a century. Jonas Salk used them to create his polio vaccine in the 50s, and they're the basis for vaccines against other diseases, including rabies and hepatitis A as well. One of the interesting questions people have is, okay, I took the vaccine. How long am I going to be immune for? For the Sinopharm vaccine, no one can yet say how long that protection lasts. It's possible that the level of antibodies drops over the course of months. but the immune system also contains special cells called memory B cells that might retain information about the coronavirus for years or even decades, giving you that long-term protection that you seek.
Yeah, and we also have the T cells activated against the coronavirus. That can, that's how your antibodies technically work. So what happens is that after the BBIBP curve, which is the coronavirus inactivated COVID-19, once it's injected into your arm, it doesn't cause the COVID-19 coronavirus. Some of the inactivated viruses are swallowed up by a type of immune cell called an antigen-presenting cell. And the antigen-presenting cell tears the coronavirus apart and displays some of its fragments on its surface. A so-called helper T cell may detect that fragment. If the fragment fits into one of its surface proteins, the T cell becomes activated and can help recruit other immune cells to respond to the vaccine. Another type of immune cell called a B cell also encounters the inactivated coronavirus. These have surface proteins in a huge variety of shapes, and a few might have the right to shape to latch onto the coronavirus. When a B cell locks on, it can pull apart all of the virus inside and present coronavirus fragments on its surface. A helper T cell activated against the coronavirus can latch onto the same fragment, and when that happens, the B cell gets activated too. It proliferates and pours out antibodies that are the same shape as the surface proteins. So basically, these guys recognize saying, hey, someone's intruded, let's copy them and get rid of them. And that's what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty interesting how these vaccines work. It's not something that you really think about and kind of process immediately, and still a lot of people have questions about vaccines. And one of the more interesting questions, Rania, is with regards to the side effects of the various vaccine candidates. So here in the UAE, we're looking at comparing the Pfizer vaccine to the Sinopharm vaccine, and so far both pharmaceutical companies said there are no major side effects to worry about, but gave a list of guidelines for people who shouldn't get those vaccines, particularly those with pre-existing conditions and notably allergies as well. That's definitely something you've got to be mindful of if you were to take either of the vaccines.
Absolutely. And also we have to also make note to the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine that is also here available in the UAE. A lot of people are using it as well. How it works is the vaccine uses messenger RNA, which is genetic material that our cells read to make proteins. And the molecule, called mRNA for short, is fragile and would be chopped to pieces by our natural enzymes if it were injected directly into the body. So to protect their vaccine, Pfizer and BioNTech wrapped the mRNA in oily bubbles made of lipid nanoparticles. So because of their fragility, the mRNA molecules will quickly fall apart at room temperature. So Pfizer is building special containers with dry ice, thermal sensors, and GPS trackers to ensure the vaccines can be transported at the temperature level that it's required to stay at, which is negative 70 degrees Celsius. So after injection, the vaccine particles bump into cells and fuse to them, releasing mRNA, and the cell's molecules read its sequence and then build spike proteins. So the mRNA from the vaccine is eventually destroyed by the cell, leaving no permanent trace. And some of the spike proteins from spikes that migrate to the surface of the cell and stick to their tip. Now, the vaccinated cells also break up some of the proteins into fragments, which they present on their surface, and so on. So kind of works different. It definitely works differently. It works on the mRNA. That's how the Pfizer works, and the other one, it stimulates antibodies, which is the Sinopharm.
So they're given 21 days apart, and what we do know is the Pfizer is given 21 days apart, and it is possible that in months after vaccination, the number of antibodies and killer T cells will drop, but the immune system may also contain the special cells called the memory B cells that may retain the information about the coronavirus for years or even decades. So effectively what it says is that the killer T cells / anti-terrorist task force, they will reduce in numbers, but then the military intelligence of your body, the B cells, they'll still remember the information. So
military intelligence. Yeah,
so
the T cells are the soldiers. The soldiers
of the
immune system.
Okay, so that's how
They
it works.
are.
Effectively, that's how it works.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's interesting. That's amazing to take back. And
they search out and they destroy the targeted invaders. That's what T cells do.
So basically, as Donald Trump used to say, build a wall.
Yeah.
You should also make your borders safe by washing your hands and also wearing your face mask so that these intruders do not enter your territory. So you don't have to rely too much on your military intelligence B and your task force T cells. So, well, at least you can get a chance to fight it off. So vaccines are there now in the United Arab Emirates, and they're out there to help protect us from the COVID-19 infection. And do let us know on the text lines 4215 if you are one of those that is getting vaccinated and is going to be out there. And it'll be great to get your thoughts on the program. Stay with us. This is the Morning Majlis, and we shall return right after a bit of a short musical interval.
If you liked this episode of the Morning Majlis, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.